pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, our December 8th Mitchell County Board of Supervisors meeting is called to order. As usual, we are online, and for those who are online, we get new microphones next week, so hopefully you can hear better then. Okay, any changes with the agenda? I do know I want to put on the next week's agenda substance abuse request.
So that's for next week?
Yeah, that's next week.
I got it. So I will make a motion to approve the agenda for December 8th, 2020.
I'm assuming no further discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That is approved for the agenda then. And how about the minutes and the claims?
I just had a question on, and maybe you can answer it, Lowell. The 7 computers for the vehicles, I think those were for the sheriff's office.
Mm-hmm.
It shows they're listed 2 different places. One it shows to be under non-departmental, and the other one under E911. Same bill. Was that $60,000?
Yes. So 911 is paying half of it, and the sheriff was the other.
Well, that's standard $10,000 a computer.
Yeah. Yeah, he mentioned that a few weeks ago.
Yeah, but I mean,
Yep.
awful expensive.
I think he said his share
Buy
was
these.
30,000.
And that's probably with the software and everything, so. Just
So-
as in it.
So move.
I know, it's awful. The price of anything.
I will second that.
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried and the minutes and claims are approved. Okay, county attorney. Are you on the line, Mark?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Are we going to discuss COVID now or wait till we have the county engineer up?
You're talking about
Sick pay.
whether they're essential workers or not.
Yeah, although I'm not quite sure how important that is, but yes.
Yes, I would just assume Rich is on
Okay,
and whoever else was going to be there to discuss this.
yes, we do have Lindsay and Rachel here too. Okay, we'll just wait on that. Do you have something else for us?
No.
Okay. Then let's move on to the possible violation of the zoning ordinance. And you want approval for sending out a letter?
Well, I'd like to discuss a little bit. Is Mark Ross there?
Yes.
I'm here.
Okay, I'll just briefly tell you what this involves. This involves Gary McComiskey's property. Received a complaint. The sheriff's department received a complaint from a citizen. There are a number of vehicles out there which aren't licensed, which are in violation of the junk vehicle ordinance. There's also a bunch of, for lack of a better word, just junk, old couches, junk out there, which I think is in violation of the zoning ordinance. It's always been my opinion that before we just write somebody a ticket, and it's always been the past board's opinion, I don't know about this board, that we at least send the person a letter saying you're in violation of the zoning ordinance, give them 30 days to get it cleaned up. Then if they don't get it cleaned up, then we write the ticket. But that request, in my opinion, always has to come from the Board of Supervisors or Mark Ross rather than a citizen or law enforcement for our office to write that letter. So, but in my opinion, I think he's in violation of both ordinances, but I'll let Mark give you his opinion.
Oh, I'd agree that appears to be like about 10 vehicles out there, although a number of them do look like they are licensed or operable anyway. So it could be that because he's allowed up to 3 unlicensed vehicles where he's at, he may only have to remove a few vehicles or garage them, whatever, in order to come back into compliance. A lot of his junk appears to be piled up on what looks like a future burn pile. He just needs to address that issue. It really doesn't look like it's going to be that hard for him to come back into compliance, so hopefully a letter will get what we need done.
I drove by there and I would agree that it probably is in violation, but I think also in 30 days it's something he could take care of. I would definitely recommend a letter ahead of time.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and just for your reference, I had the sheriff's department check, and there are a number of vehicles out there, and I think there's 5 that are unlicensed.
Okay.
Okay, so you guys want to approve sending out a letter to Mick?
I will make a motion to approve sending out a letter to inform him of this.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion is carried then. And who takes care of sending out that letter, Mark?
I'll take care of, I've got it ready to go. I'll just get it out today or tomorrow.
Thank you. Okay, county engineer, let's
Morning.
hear from you.
Not much to update on as far as operations go. We're still digging ditches as much as we can and doing it while the ground's not frozen. One of the big things we got is now that we've had COVID in our department, are we essential workers? I think the definition is yes. Are we exempt from the FF, the Family First Coronavac or virus? That's up to the board to decide. I know that other departments have their elected officials and whatnot. I know I talked to Greg here last week about what he might be doing with his group. I'll get some more details from him, but it sounds like he is, even though they're a first responding group, he's still allowing the 80 days, I believe, if that's correct.
Yep,
Yeah.
80 hours.
80 hours, I'm sorry, not 80
Yep.
days, 80 hours, yeah.
Yeah.
Say, I don't
We all-
remember 80 days, but
Come on, I'm lobbying for some more time here.
Around the world in 80 days.
So I mean, 80 hours of that, I think it'd be great to be fair to everybody in the county that way. All I need though is I need the board to define for me whether we're gonna be exempt or not exempt from that. There's been emails back and forth between myself, the auditor's office, and Renee on this, and there just needs to be a determination so we can make things fair. And then what I'll do is, if you guys are okay with it, of allowing this, then I'll get with Greg and see how he's handling it. I have an idea in my head of how I'd want to handle it for when they're using their sick time versus this 80 hours of, I don't know, for lack of better terms, Corona sick time. So I'll let you guys kind of ask questions if you have any.
Well, I think you need to say also, this has been also from the home health department.
Well,
emails.
right, it's from, but they don't determine who's essential and who's not essential, the CDC
Right.
and so.
They kind of giving guidelines.
Yep, they're giving guidelines as to how we respond. I've got a CDC document for how essential workers operate if they are exposed or if they're not, you know, as far as coming back to work, even if they may test positive and not be symptomatic. There's some guidelines there from the CDC we may try to follow as far as that goes. If they test positive but are asymptomatic, they come back and wear gloves and masks and stay away from people. And if, you know, during a snowstorm, if we aren't in a critical operation mode, then I think they should stay home. But if we have to plow snow, I think they come in if they're asymptomatic and plow snow. But
Yeah, and I think, well, I am actually for consistency of everybody getting paid for this.
well, it does kind of approach the case-by-case basis, however, because of the need for having people present now.
Right, and yes, so you are gonna have to use some discretion. But I also want to ask Mark, is it essential that we determine if they're essential workers or not? Can we just go ahead with this without making that judgment? Because everything I've read, there's a lot of arguments both ways on that.
Correct.
Here's my opinion, and tell me if I'm wrong here. Anybody who thinks I'm wrong here, just let me know. It seems, and I'm going to use the word asinine, that if you're determined to be an essential worker, somebody who's really needed, somebody, who's crucial, then we're not going to give you a benefit. But these other people who aren't really needed, we're going to give them a benefit. So I've looked, and a lot of states have said who's essential, who's not. Iowa hasn't given any guidance. I don't think it's necessary for you to determine, oh, this is an essential worker, or this is not. If you just make the decision, we're going to consider everybody to be, and I don't know if the word is exempt or non-exempt, we're going to give each worker those 80 hours. I think the board could just say, we're going to give each worker those 80 hours. We're not making a determination whether you're essential or not. We're just doing this as our county policy. Does that sound right?
That good, at least
Well,
that's what I was hoping for.
That's more understanding than what I've been reading and.
First of all, I agree,
understand
it's
from
asinine.
our-
I agree with you, Mark, on that the people that are essential have no benefit. I think that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard.
What do you mean they don't have benefit?
Well, they don't get what the non-essential people get for if they
But
get
we
sick.
can say they can
But
without
you guys
making-
can do that and allow that to be not exempt. By definition, according to the ISAC and the attorneys in Iowa, the documents I sent you guys, there's a definition for essential workers. Public works and people who run special equipment and are called upon in a disaster declaration are essential workers. That means secondary roads is. Whether or not they're exempt or not is kind of a determination made. When we talked about this in March, it was you guys can make the determination of whether we're included or not. I think it's fair that if everybody else is included, that we be included too.
In my
Not being an
opinion,
elected official, I need you guys to tell me that this is what we're gonna do.
Yeah, well,
in
that.
my opinion, I think, yeah, they're essential, but to consider sometime who is the emergency responder. That's a stretch.
That's a broad definition, emergency
Yeah.
responder. They didn't, they used emergency responder and healthcare workers, but underneath emergency responder, they used a broad definition of who emergency responders are.
But essential makes more sense.
Right, essential, so, there are some things though, because of our situations, we just can't do a blanket, here's your 80 hours, go with it. Because we need the employees, so there's gotta be some discretion and some judgment as to, like I said, according to the CDC guidelines, if you're asymptomatic and you may test positive, and we need to plow snow, if you're asymptomatic, there are guidelines that they put out for you to come back to work and plow snow, or work when we need you.
And
If they test positive
then
and
we
have
need
symptoms,
documentation that.
yep, we need documentation of that, so.
Definitely documentation.
I'll talk with Greg on how he handles it, but I think that the best thing is if you've been exposed, you think you've been exposed, you go home, it's your sick time bank, it's your normal sick time bank until you get that test date. That test date's there, you get the results, and if it's positive, you go back retroactive to that test date, and that's when your 80 hours will kick in, but up until then, I don't know if it's the regular sick bank or not, I don't know how other people are doing it, but I want to,
Rachel and Lindsay, you want to speak up on that?
So,
What do you think?
this is Jessica from Public Health, and I'd like to add a few things to that too. So, anyone who tests positive, they are in isolation. They should not be going to work. The only time I consider them individuals going back to work would be healthcare providers, and that would be in a situation of a, let's say, a nursing home who's really short-staffed, and if they're asymptomatic, they're able to go back. But anyone else in isolation, the only
Those,
time
Jess, it's kind of hard to hear you. Can you talk a little slower because it all kind of gets garbled? Please?
actually, I'll call in here quick, because I'm speaking on my computer, so let me call in, and then I'll talk then, okay?
Okay, thank you.
I did catch that.
I guess my personal opinion is that Rich could send somebody in a motor grader by themselves who's not having any contact with
well,
anybody.
and like I said, there's in September, They had critical infrastructure workers who have had exposure but remain asymptomatic should adhere to the following practices prior or during their work shift, which means if they're asymptomatic but maybe test positive or have exposure and remain asymptomatic, they can come back to work. Now, I don't know if it really says whether they're positive or not, whether they can come back to work. I guess there's some definition in there as to whether or not exposure relates to being positive or negative. So, I guess I want to make sure that we're doing it right according to public health, and there's some freedom here with the CDC. I want to make sure that, because we need people when it's snowing, and we can't afford to have people gone, so.
Okay, Jessa, are you back on?
Yep, I am. Can you guys hear me better?
Yes,
Yes.
100% better.
Okay. So in my opinion, this is how the quarantine and isolation works. So if someone tests positive, they are considered in isolation and they should not go back to work regardless if they're asymptomatic or not. As you know, Rich, out there, you guys have had a spread across all your workers, regardless of it. The only time I would consider someone going back to work would be, for example, a long-term care employee in healthcare. Those individuals that are short on staff, it's widespread throughout there. They're asymptomatic. I'd say yes, go back in, work in the red zone where there's other COVID people diagnosed with it, but never would I recommend otherwise to go back. If you are in quarantine, so a quarantine is considered a close contact to someone that's tested positive. If you are in quarantine, I would consider, and just like Mark said, you know, we're not here to define who's essential or not, but I would consider all warehouse employees essential. You can go back to work after a negative test and monitor your symptoms outside of work. You have to quarantine. There's some guidelines that you have to put into place of wearing a face mask at all times, maintaining social distance, good hand hygiene, but you could go back to work since you're considered essential. I think the important thing to know too is, so we have this CARES Act, it covers 80 hours. After that 80 hours, it's 2/3 pay. How frequently are you going to pay employees 2/3 of the pay for being not responsible outside of work, inside of work, and having to quarantine, you know, twice a month for the 10 days? Do you continue to keep paying them that 2/3 pay, or is there going to be policies or guidelines put into place of, if you're quarantined of this amount of time or at this location, this is how much we're going to cover? And because I've seen lots of people continuing to say that they're in quarantine every, twice a month, one time a month, and they're continuing to get paid that 2/3 pay. So where do you set that policy? Where do you set that fine line at?
Jessa, this is Mark. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Just explain this to me because I don't quite understand it. My understanding is if you are deemed an essential worker and you are positive but you're asymptomatic, you're supposed to return to work. I can tell you this much. I know that's true because both of our daughters are in the healthcare, and I know that's that way at Mercy down in Mason City too. If you are asymptomatic and test positive but you're asymptomatic, you go to work anyway.
Yep. And so that's healthcare. And like I said, healthcare only. I wouldn't consider, unless you can work totally independent on your own, but I wouldn't say, hey, Rachel, where she works with 4 other people, you're asymptomatic, go ahead and go back into the office and be around all those individuals, touch the copy machine, work at your computer, those types of things.
Yeah, she's not considered an essential worker probably, but I think secondary roads in a snowstorm condition would be considered essential, and I may be wrong here, so that's why I'm asking. You can find this out easier than I can.
No, and I agree with you. Like I said, healthcare workers for sure are essential. They can go back to work. They wear the appropriate PPE, those types of things. So yes, that is 100% correct, Mark.
Yeah, and I think this applies to anyone who's deemed essential.
But in certain situations, yes, if going into work, at the roads department, they're not always considered essential. Like you said, the snowstorm, yes, they would be.
Okay, I agree with you 100% that we're on the same page then. I just wanted to make sure. Thank you.
I could agree with that, where if it's a snowstorm and you're asymptomatic and positive, we can isolate you in your own piece of equipment for the whole day.
Right, that's what I figured, you could isolate them. Okay, Lindsay or Rachel, did you guys wanna tell us what you're thinking?
I think that, I mean, I agree with what Jess is saying. Like, I wanna follow what their guidelines are, and I think everything needs to be consistent across the county, cause I don't want anything to come back.
Right, I would like to be
I think I was aware
consistent.
that
It only
some
seems
of-
fair.
Some of the employees at the secondary roads were upset that they weren't getting this benefit. I was just made aware of it at the end of last week, so I think we need to have a lot better communication about this. And I think it needs to be fair across the board. I have been following the Coronavirus Act, because that's what I've been told by a few different places and home health. I guess so I think a policy needs to be put in place, how you guys wanna handle it, that's not for me to decide. But also beyond the 80 hours that everybody should get, because I'm running into, like, I have an employee now who wants to use another 80 because they were exposed, and I don't know that I agree with that. Because then you're gonna have people starting to take advantage, but we need to have something in place so I know what to follow when I'm doing payroll.
That will get taken advantage
Yeah.
of.
From what I
Yeah,
read,
for
that you
sure.
get 80 hours, that's it.
No,
I don't care if you go to a
everything
different
over
employer. you
80
get
hours and then they go to
Yeah.
their own sick pay.
Right, okay, I just wanted that you guys were in agreement with that, because that's what I,
Are you guys
would
in
suggest
agreement with
doing.
that?
80
But-
hours and then it's sick leave.
Okay, perfect.
You okay with that, Stan? Does that sound?
Okay.
Okay. Rachel,
However,
do you have something
I
else
wanna
to
say if
add?
it was 80, you use your 80 hours, if you test positive after that, that is automatically paid then.
If it's positive,
If
if
it
you
gets
test
positive.
positive.
That would be,
Yes.
that'd be a
Yes.
no-brainer there,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
That makes sense. So basically, I think we're pretty much all on the same board. I don't think it's necessary we say whether they're essential or not, because we're giving them the same. Or is there some reason you have to have us say
I
that?
think we need to be, for the situations where we have to be at work to plow snow, that's different than somebody
So
else.
for that reason, you would like us to say they
Well, we are essential workers, it's a matter of whether we're gonna apply the regulation from the government or not, whether we're gonna, what you're saying is we're gonna allow the 80 hours, we just have to be case by case because of the situations we can be in when we plow snow.
And they also have to have their test.
They have to have a positive test.
Yep.
Now, I don't know what other people are doing, whether, you know, you can tell me if other people are saying, okay, I've been exposed, I gotta go home and get tested. Are they going from that day that they say they're exposed, using 80 hours, or from the test date?
Well, it probably should be from the test date.
I would think so, because anybody can sit there and say, I think I've been exposed, I'm
Yeah,
gonna use my
right.
hours. and
I
then
would
get
say
paid.
from
I mean,
the
I think you
test
gotta
date.
go retroactive to the test date,
Yes.
and not necessarily the result, because it's the test date that they're
Right.
gonna go retroactive from, so.
Right.
I say I get exposed and I gotta go home and isolate for, until I can get tested, those 3 days are out of your sick pay. You go that test date, pardon me?
Do we want test date or result date?
Well, I don't,
Positive
I
test
think you
date.
gotta probably do the test date, cause that's what they're gonna go retroactive to, when they say you test positive, then you go back from those days.
Gotcha,
To find out if they do contact tracing,
sure,
they go back from those days, so.
that makes sense.
Otherwise, you're gonna have, you could have every week somebody says I was, close to somebody, you could have 80 hours used up with no real value to,
Right, right.
Is that how you see it too, Jessa, is from the test date, then they should start quarantining or isolating?
Their first date of quarantine is their last known contact with a positive individual.
Well, that's different then.
Yeah.
That would be, so let's say I was around this individual on Friday, and they started getting symptoms on Monday, and then they went in and got tested on Tuesday. They'd still go back to Friday. I was left around that individual on Friday. I don't find out till Tuesday that I have to be in quarantine. So I can, from whenever they get notified that they need to be in quarantine. So I'd contact that individual on Tuesday and let them know they've been a close contact.
so they would use those 80 hours from the last initial contact.
Yes, because then at that time I'd ask them to leave work. I'd explain to them if they're considered essential. I don't make that call if they're considered essential. If they're considered essential, they can get tested, return back to work with precautions.
Okay.
Okay, so,
You're asking for a motion that's,
I don't know if it's gotta be a motion, I just want some guidance here so I
yeah,
can
and
start.
I
So
think we
this
should
isn't
put it
going to
in
be-
writing though, so we can get it out to all
That's
the
fine if you guys
department
wanna do that.
heads.
We just never had an answer as to how we're gonna apply this
Well, it
a
sounds like
secondary
we
road.
do it from the time they're exposed.
Lowell, do you feel comfortable to write something up, just that,
I think you need to make a motion. You need to make it a policy.
okay, well, we,
Not just to say this is that, because you need to
All right.
make
We
it,
should do
make
it
it
now.
official.
I'm not quite sure how to word that.
That you're gonna
Well,
apply the
we're gonna have-
FFCA to secondary
Yeah.
roads, so they're not exempt anymore.
FCRA.
FCRA,
Well, why not come
FFCRA.
back next
FFCRA.
week with the policy and retroactive?
Put her on the agenda for next week for action.
Yeah, and get something written
Okay.
up, and, I mean,
Okay with
meanwhile,
that.
you can probably be.
and I don't have a problem doing this, I just
Putting
want
this in
direction so that we
place.
know where we're headed.
Right, and so we're
Because-
consistent and
Yep.
treating people the same.
I want-
Exactly, I didn't know how the sheriff's department was handling their cases, so.
Does anybody know?
Yeah, I talked to Greg, he's,
And
he's,
Jessa
Greg
will be
talked to
helping
Lowell and I
and
about
be
it.
involved with
He's
this,
doing what we're
writing
doing.
this
That's what I thought.
up.
Yep,
it's gonna be a simple thing, I mean, it's just a matter of
So we're all in the same,
All right.
secondary roads is
we'll
not
get-
exempt.
Yeah, I'd hate to say it today, I wanna get it in writing to
That's
make
fine.
sure we're
That's-
wording it right.
I know where we're headed now, and I can tell the
Yes.
guys that's what we're gonna do.
technically it was
We
not
can
on the
sit here
agenda.
and work that out.
Right,
Yep,
okay, we'll have something by next week then,
Okay.
all right.
that's all I've got, that was the biggest issue we had to face this week, I think. We'll see
Okay.
what Friday brings us.
Okay,
Are we doing any blading yet, or,
Oh, I think they're trying to, well, it's still thought out,
boy, some of these intersections, the washboards are really bad.
I'll let them know. I
I
know the
mean,
blades,
not that they have to hit the, you know.
they've been going out, I know the blades have been going out, I just don't know where they're hitting everything.
Steve, you got a question?
Are you making the, when mold comes as the policy, is that retroactive? Is that what you're saying?
we'll approve it next week.
It'll be on the agenda.
We'll read it and
Okay, I don't want to worry about it.
fine tune it.
No.
Make sure.
Yeah, then you'll have the exact wording. Okay. Holiday schedule for 2021, you guys have that in front of you.
Yes.
I do have a question, okay. Christmas Eve lands on Friday, so why would we need the 23rd? We would just take the 24th off.
Well, yeah, that's the question.
Yeah, I would.
But you also gotta take Christmas.
Right, and so if you
So
wanna
that's why I
do,
put on there 2 days.
okay, and I guess it
But it's up
depends
to
on
you.
how you wanna do it. Would you rather do for Christmas that Monday, the 27th, or
I don't care, I'm not gonna be here.
do you guys wanna look at a calendar so it's easier for you to see what I'm talking about?
Yeah, that's a little stretch, an extra day there, but in
Usually-
recent years, the
usually-
courthouse is taking a full, used to be the courthouse would take half a day on Christmas Eve. Well, recent years, it's been a full day.
Well, they'll still have a full day on Christmas Eve,
But you gotta have a day to count for Christmas.
Right, and so that's what I'm asking. For the Christmas one, do you want,
So you either, would you do it Thursday, Friday, or Friday, Monday?
Well, I've never agreed with President's Day neither, and,
Gives you an idea.
yeah, no,
do we wanna go with Friday? Let's finish this one quick first. Do you wanna go with Friday, Monday, then for the Christmas?
what I would do is, I would approve, New Year's Day, and, then defer the rest of it to the new board. There's no hurry in coming up with the schedule.
I also think it's no big deal to get it done with.
Yeah,
They're
I
gonna
think
have a lot
up
of
to you
things to
guys.
deal with. I just
It
soon
ain't
get
like
it
it's a
done.
This
big
is
deal.
what the
A day off is a day
elected
off.
official or the departments have,
Yeah, and that way
recommended.
you can have it in place already, starting January, and I just soon get it done today. They're gonna have plenty to deal with as it is.
Well, I don't see a problem with the way it is written here.
Well, again, I disagree with President's Day. I think that ought to be a floating holiday. I mean, they ought to come in on President's Day and they get a floating holiday. I've always said that.
I don't know, it's quite common.
Most places
to have
are most places are open on President's Day,
Banks are closed, the post office is closed.
and that's it.
Well,
I know, but
Banks are closed on,
tends to be
Martin
what we
Luther
do.
King Day
well,
too.
so we only take one of the two.
Well,
It's been that way for a lot of
I
years.
understand it's been, that doesn't mean it has to be that way continuously.
No, it doesn't mean it, but I also know it's very common with other places too, that's, other courthouses, I should say, that they are closed.
Being
And I know, I
consistent
want to
to
say
the
county
public.
social services, I think that's when they're, unless they do Martin Luther.
No, I don't see a
But
problem
they have one or the other.
with what is written here.
Yeah, I'm okay if you would rather do that, Thursday, Friday. I guess in my mind, I was thinking Friday and Monday.
Whatever.
Would you be okay with Friday and Monday? Because just keep the December 24th right where it's at,
A
which
day
is
off
Friday.
is a day off,
And then
Mark, so-
Christmas, use it on Monday.
It's the
Be a
same
nice-
amount of
It'd be a
days.
nice long weekend. It's, right, it's not that big a deal
And
either
it's
way.
only gonna happen this next year.
Right. I don't know, what do you think? I don't care.
I'll make the motion to whatever you want. This isn't a big deal.
I know, it's really not. I guess in my mind, just leaving the 24th on the 24th instead of changing it, so I'm thinking to make a motion for Friday and Monday off. Monday off for Christmas.
I'll second that then.
Okay. Any further discussion? And we might as well vote on the whole thing. I know Stan is not happy about President's Day, but I'm
So then
really.
it'll be the 24th and the 27th.
Yes, 24th and 27th, and leaving, sorry Stan, President's Day the same. Any further discussion?
Did you second that, Steve?
Yes, I did.
Yeah, we're kind of out of order here, but yes, he did. No further discussion, all in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
And the motion is carried. Okay. Meetings attended, I had two. What was? Heartland Risk Pool. There's a settlement in Chickasaw County that has not been reached yet. There have been a lot of cyber claims from people working from home due to COVID and it not being as safe. Something for us to keep in mind. They're looking at a 30% increase of just the cyber insurance, and it had already gone up 30% that year before, so that's huge. They're finding from statistics that millennials are the most educated and used to dealing with large number. So we think that might be having to do with settlements. It used to be 1 million was a lot. And it's like no big deal to them to ask for more than that now. And they're using tactics that are a little uncomfortable. Obviously not all of them, but many are using tactics of getting the jury so angry. So we're seeing really much higher numbers for settlements, and that's going to cost us. And we will need to look at 2 of our buildings to discuss their worth. That's not till the next meeting, and they'll send us information on that. Judy will talk to the auditors on how this would work best for each county to get this accomplished as far as harassment training. And Heartland wants to know who takes my place when the time comes. County Social Service HR Committee met. And Mary approved for employees to start working from home 11/12 through the 30th because of COVID, and that's been extended to the end of December. Currently, 31 staff are working from home, are choosing to do that, or are in quarantine, or due to their children's school being online. 16 employees are still working in their office. We have the position to fill of Children's Behavioral Health Coordinator. They offer it in office first. We finally got a new hire for iStock Coordinator in Cedar Rapids, Casey Wells, which relieved all the people that were having to fill in for that position. They were tickled. Conflict of interest policy will be presented to all employees and board members to sign. Finance manager salary increase. Lisa will get an increase in pay for taking on so many more duties to get her into the pay level of others in her position. They are discussing a permanent option for employee, telework options, and an employee committee working on reviewing the employee handbook. Will present their recommendations to us, the HR committee, in the future, and we okayed employees donating PTO hours to other employees. That was kind of a big one. And that's all I've got for you.
I did not have anything.
I had Upper Cedar Watershed, and basically Charles City Mayor Dean Andrews reported on the progress of construction of the Southwest Development Park Stormwater Management Project in Charles City. Sherm Lundy reported on that he recently spoke with 2 local elected officials in his area regarding their opinions on conservation issues and their plans for support of future legislation favorable to natural resources conservation in the area. Linda Tajan shared a request from the city of Shell Rock for assistance in the establishment of the WMA for the Shell Rock River watershed. She also reported that the vote to send a letter from the Upper Cedar in support of the Cedar River Wetland Resource Enhancement Partnership proposal by the Nature Conservancy of Iowa was 11 yes and no votes. And Andrew Durham had a presentation on native plant effects on drainage tile. Evan Bream, Eastern Iowa agronologist with Indio Ag, whatever, shared on how Indio Ag is planning environmentally sustainable production system with producers in the area. Mary Beth Stevenson reported on watershed and source water coordination for the city of Cedar Rapids. And Doug Johnson reported on the progress of the Charles City watershed in 2021. For the last year and a half, we have not had a representative from the city of St. Ansgar on the Upper Cedar. And so, Mayor Horgan, you will want to get information on how to appoint somebody to the Upper Cedar.
Stan, is that a quarterly meeting?
It's a quarterly meeting.
And then where do they usually?
They normally meet, if they're meeting in person, they normally meet at the Charles City Library.
And do you have a time or special day?
Again, it's, we've met at 5:30, we've met at 6 o'clock, I mean,
But it's usually early evening.
yeah.
I'll put that in when I'm updating those boards. Okay, transfer of funds.
We have 2 of them, both for secondary roads. This is a budgeted item, so $111,455 from general basic to secondary roads, and $643,526.50 from rural basic to secondary roads.
So will we do each one as a separate, or we combine them in the
Yeah,
motion?
just so note, there's no
Oh,
motion needed.
Oh, just so no,
So
okay.
noted.
So, yeah, and that second one is, half of that, so, probably April or so, the other half will be transferred.
I was gonna say, this is usually the
The
time.
first one is the total amount in the budget. So if you ever look at in the 99s, it's, there's transfers there if you ever want to look at it.
It's always this time of year that you do this.
Yeah, usually with the first one, correct.
Okay.
Okay, so noted. Do you have some manure management?
Just
plans?
one, it's the old gestation site at 3538 Timber Avenue, Osage, Carl Tice.
Okay. And do we have any public comments today? Not too many of you here. Okay, all right, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Okay,